doorbell. We're here with our first guest speaker ever. This is Courtney Lewis.
Hello.
And she is actually one of my brides. She got married in April in Winston-Salem, and we're finally meeting in person for the first time.
In real life, from social media to real life.
I know, it's so exciting. Although she has a different last name now.
I know. Who's Courtney Lewis?
No idea.
To be determined.
So we're just enjoying some lunch here and chatting about influencer marketing and in the wedding and creative industry. This is going to be in reference to styled shoots and free work that you're doing for like features, publications, or workshops, things like that, where people can ask to submit sponsored work. So we're just going to talk a little bit about what that actually means and how to value that and how to decide if an opportunity is right for you or not.
Yeah.
So Courtney, tell us a little bit about how you started and got into this field.
Yeah, absolutely. So I work for a marketing company here in Winston-Salem, and a few years ago, the company that I work for actually acquired an influencer marketing company. And so I became very familiar with influencer marketing as a marketing medium and really became more aware of the real value that it has, not only in the brand space, but in the space that you're in, right? So really an awesome opportunity to explore new customers, explore different marketing mediums in a creative way that maybe is not as costly as traditional marketing mediums like advertising and things like that.
And are there specific brands or types of brands, industries that you focus on in your company?
Yeah, so the company that I work for helps connect food brands, CPG brands that you would see in grocery stores with influencers that have a passion about a particular field. So we help match, for example, a gluten-free brand with a blogger that maybe focuses on gluten-free recipes and gluten-free cooking and a gluten-free lifestyle, and help connect them in a way that they can then talk about those products and promote using them or trying them, and ultimately driving customers to purchase that brand in a particular retail location.
Yeah, well, that's so cool. I bet you get to enjoy a lot of good foods.
Our influencers are very good cooks, and I have on more than one occasion gotten to try some of their goodies, and there's actually a website that a lot of the content gets aggregated onto. So anytime I'm feeling kind of out of ideas from Pinterest, which I don't know if that's really possible, to be out of Pinterest ideas, I can go and try something from them, and they're way better cooks than I ever am. So.
Well, that's so fun, and you know, I'm sure you use some of the Pinterest and some influencers for your wedding planning too.
Oh my gosh, yeah. That's actually how I came up with the creative idea that you helped put together with our name cards with the little Florida oranges, was spending hours on Pinterest looking for something, looking for inspiration, and finally came across something I liked. So.
Did you use any of the like magazines or blogs that you remember when you were?
Oh gosh, I looked at probably that's like a popular engagement gift, right? People gift you wedding magazines at them. So just about every wedding magazine out there, plenty of blogs, Style Me Pretty, you name it. And then Pinterest, of course, a ton too. So there's no shortage of content out there these days.
And that's kind of, I mean, Style Me Pretty is one that a lot of us aspire to get featured on. Talk to us a little bit about kind of the exact value of this, because I think that a lot of people in this industry get a little upset when they're asked for free work, and they say, you know, exposure doesn't pay my bills. But from your point of view, it definitely does have a quantifiable value. So tell me.
Yeah, absolutely. So influencer marketing, whether it's in this space or others, I mean, the principles are really the same, right? Exposure itself certainly doesn't pay the bills, but if you are picking the right people to work with who've got the right audience, and making sure that the value exchange is equal on both sides, you'll be able to get value out of it, right? So making sure that wherever you are providing that work or whoever you're working with in exchange provides you either additional information about the folks that they're reaching through their digital publication or through their printed publication, so that you can engage with them. If somebody expresses interest via their website or their social media, that you have an opportunity to connect with them and that they help facilitate that type of thing. It's really important to make sure that although there may not be money changing hands, that there's value exchanging hands.
Do you guys have a contract in place with your influencers? How do you kind of quantify what you're giving them versus what they're giving you?
Absolutely. the influencers all sign contracts, and I would encourage anybody here to do the same thing. Make sure that you're clear around what you're providing and what you'll get back. So are you going to make sure that you are tagged in whatever the content is? Make sure that you are clearly marked as the person who's created the work, right? That you have the rights to then use that work potentially in other places. So if it's something digitally or something in print, that you have the rights to either use the images or the content that you've created in your own social media spaces and in your own advertising work as well, so that it doesn't just live in exclusivity with the person you're working with. And then I think finally, as I kind of mentioned earlier, that if people do express interest, whether it's through commenting or writing or emailing, that you have the opportunity to engage with them. And if they raise their hand and say, hey, who did this, or I'd love to connect with this person, that they were either reply and include you, or have to provide your contact information, so that you're not losing good opportunities through the work that you've done. So it's not kind of a black hole where you do the work and maybe somebody else copies it, or maybe you see an uptick in traffic to your own website or something like that, but you're not really sure what it ultimately translated to. So being able to kind of attribute either new customers or new opportunities to whatever work you're doing is really important.
Yeah, and just to translate that a little bit on the kind of creative wedding side, with styled shoots, I definitely recommend having a contract. That's something I'm personally still kind of working on, and I love the value of it, but haven't fully cemented that yet. And so I think it's really important to establish your exact expectations. For instance, I did some work for a contestant who used to be on The Bachelor last year.
Oh wow, how cool.
And it was the terms were kind of already laid out for me beforehand, but I wanted to make sure, exactly how many Instagram stories that were going to tag me, exactly how many Instagram posts were going to tag me, or were they going to have pictures of the work I did. And they had already slated it to be featured in People, so then we made sure that, on the blogs from People, they were linking directly back to my website and that kind of thing.
All of that's super important. Being really clear and quantifiable about what you're going to get out of it, because they know what they're going to get out of it, right? Beautiful work that lots of people are either going to buy their magazine for or view their website for. So their value exchange is really clear, but making sure that you get an understanding of what you're going to get in return is important.
And I think you were talking about making sure those kind of referrals come back to you, or if people express interest. This is something I see, if someone, say a planner asks for some photos or some flowers for a wedding show, and you're not actually going to be on site. This is a really important thing where, you make sure you give them the business cards. If they ask for menus from me, print your logo on the back of the menu, so if someone at the wedding show picks it up, they see that on the back end. And then also in your contract, you can ask that planner provides you the contact list that they grabbed from the show as well. So they're going to capture all those leads and interest and email addresses.
You should be able to take advantage of it too.
So if you're providing some of that information, and if you're part of the booth that draws that client in, then you definitely should have access to that email list as well. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about some things you would consider and how you kind of choose which opportunities are going to be the right.
So I think the most important thing is to really understand what your goals are in this space, right? So making sure that if you are going to take on a styled shoot, or you are going to provide assets, content, whatever for a show, that you understand what you're trying to get out of it, and that the show or the publication aligns with what you as a brand are trying to do. So it's really important to make sure to kind of critically assess, is this publication, are the readers the type of people that would be interested in my work, that I want to use to grow my business? Or maybe that's not your goal. Maybe your goal is to connect with more professionals and network with other planners, so that you have a greater network wherever you are. Or maybe it's to expand the area that you do work in. But it's really important to understand up front, what am I trying to accomplish by providing this work, so that they, as the person accepting the work, understands that, and you as well. So I think that's the first thing, is to really be clear about your goals. The second thing is to be really careful about your selection of who you're working with. So understanding who their readers are, like I said, understanding what they're going to do with your work, and then understanding what kind of platforms they're using as well. So are the platforms that they're using the types of platforms that your potential customers are engaging on, right? So depending upon what area you're in or what type of business you're in, it may not make sense for you to work with somebody who wants to use your work on Facebook Live, for example. Maybe you know that your clientele is really exclusively looking for wedding stuff on Pinterest or on Instagram, and it would be great, but are you really going to get the value out of putting your work on Facebook for this particular customer? Maybe their following isn't very big. So really understanding the value exchange and being selective about who you're working with.
Yeah, so I think that's really important, especially what you said about kind of establishing your goals for something. So with a style shoot or workshop, for instance, there's some that are directed more at other people in the industry. So that would be, photographers, planners, florists, etc. And those are the people who are going to be seeing your work and feeling the benefit of what you're providing. And then there's other things where the goal is to have it published in a blog, which might reach potential clients. So, and depending on your client base, like say you do branding work for photographers, then maybe you want to do some of those things that are going to reach a ton of photographers and look at photography workshops or conferences as good opportunities for you. Whereas something, that is going to be in Style Me Pretty may not exactly be the right fit for you because you're not trying to get engaged couples, which are the people that are reading Style Me Pretty, or their friends who give it to them at their shower.
I think the only other thing I would say is, make sure you do your homework on whatever the marketing medium is too, right? So understand who else is either providing content for the website, for the show, for the magazine, and if the quality of their work aligns with your quality of work as well, right? So you want to make sure that if you're doing really high quality, couture, expensive work, you don't want to be advertising or being aligned with folks who are just getting into the industry or maybe don't have a ton of experience or are still doing work for clients for free on a regular basis because they're just trying to build their book of business, and vice versa. You want to make sure that you're in a space that aligns with where you sit in terms of quality, in terms of cost, all those types of things, so that you don't kind of stick out or it doesn't seem misaligned for whoever's reading it too, right?
And also just style in general. If someone wanted something that was extremely modern and your style is very, rustic or romantic, that might not be the best fit because it's going to be a little bit, like you said, misaligned.
And then you're not going to get the customer value too, right? Because whoever's reading it is looking for something specific and you don't meet that need.
Yeah, and then say the planner or the photographer gets a lead from it, they're probably not going to give it to you because you don't match their couple's style. So it might just be providing free work for free work. And that, I think, doesn't pay the bills.
That does not pay the bills.
I'm definitely sure doesn't pay the bills. When you do influencer marketing, how much creativity do you give the influencers with the product in what they're, the pictures they create or the content that they create with the product?
Yeah, so I think here's the place where corporate influencer marketing and the work that you guys are doing differs a little bit. So in our world, when we connect a brand with an influencer, the influencer is the only creative person in that relationship, right?
Yeah.
So the brand is corporate, they have brand standards and product standards, and they're very serious and lots of rules. And so the goal is to give the influencer creative license to authentically talk to whatever the product is and whatever experience they have with the product. In this case, I would say the creative, are the ones who really need to be in the driver's seat on what you create, right? You want it to be a collaborative process with whoever you're creating the work for, but at the same time, you want it to remain true to your brand and be authentic to what you typically create, because otherwise, it's kind of a bait and switch, right?
Yeah, what's the point?
Exactly. What's the point in doing it? So I think that's really the important thing here, is that you're in the driver's seat with what you're creating, and it's a collaborative process. If you're working with somebody who wants to kind of dictate exactly what they need, exactly how they want it, and there's no real creative license, it might not be the right fit for you.
That should be, in my opinion, that should be a paying client.
Yeah, absolutely.
If they want to hire you to create something for them, and they have very specific guidelines, then it's creative, or should be a paid opportunity. Whereas if they're kind of sending you maybe an inspiration board, giving you some words to work off of, guidance is always great. Those brand guidelines, I'm sure you give to your influencers.
Absolutely.
And say, it has to be in this color or whatever. But within those guidelines, allowing you for creativity, and that's something that's really important in creative industry in finding your ideal client in the first place. You're probably going to create better work if you're allowed to take the inspiration and run with it, as opposed to kind of, oh, can you move this a little bit bigger?
Micromanaging is not the point of this, right? It's to, they see value in you. That's why they're approaching you. So they should let you kind of spread your wings and do what you do best.
And especially if it's a style shoot, the whole point of those is to really like push the boundaries and do stuff that's kind of, you haven't seen it on Pinterest before, because if you have, then you're never going to get that published anyway. So tell me a little bit about when you're looking for an influencer, like, is there a certain number of followers they need to have? Are there certain...
So I think it's a balance, right? One of the things that we preach in kind of the corporate world is the more followers isn't necessarily the better. So what we know is that in the consumer world, there's kind of this group we call the power middle, which is folks who don't have 16 followers, but don't have Kim Kardashian style followers. And the reason for that is they have a more authentic voice, and they typically play in a more authentic space. They're talking about their real life. They're talking about things that are going on in their real world. And so as a reader, you connect more and are more likely to buy the product, take the recommendation, things like
more
that.
More so than Kim Kardashian.
Exactly. I don't know if I would take any recommendations from her these days. But it's a similar principle, right? So you want to be mindful. You don't want to be putting in tons of free time and work into a project that's going to be seen by 8 people. But at the same time, the principle of authenticity applies here too, right? So as something becomes more clearly corporate or big, if you will, people become naturally more cautious of the authenticity of it and things like that. So just be mindful of picking someone who's got someone or something publication-wise that has a really good following, but at the same time isn't trying to do too many things at once. That's really important.
So just to translate this a little bit, you know, Style Me Pretty is great, but they might not, they do have a very specific look, so they might not be the look that your clients are going to have. So maybe choose something. There's a lot of very specific publications that are for geographical areas or types of styles. I know there are modern wedding ones. There's kind of a, I forget what it's called, but there's kind of like a rocker glam wedding blog out there that you can submit really different out there weddings to. And that type of bride is going to be more, bride or groom is going to be more drawn to that than they might to Style Me Pretty. So, you know, don't take like the famous name and think that that's what you need to aim for in every, publication that you're
and every bride is different. And the same way every bride is different, they're making decisions differently too, right? So another thing I would say is really important to be mindful of is understanding where in the planning process brides are typically, or grooms, are typically making a decision around the product or service that you provide, right? So wedding planners, most of the time, it's the very first thing you pick, right? Like I picked a wedding planner before I picked a wedding date, which is pretty common. So be thinking about where are brides looking when they're making a decision about a wedding planner. Who are they talking to? How is that decision being made? And same thing around all the other big items related to a wedding, right? Picking a florist or a photographer, probably happening pretty early, at least in this area. Photographers are booked up way in advance, and same thing with florists. And you and I talked a little bit earlier, I didn't even know I needed a calligrapher until like 8 weeks before the wedding. Thank goodness I had a good wedding planner. But so that's a different decision making cycle, and so understanding where brides are looking when they're making those decisions and at what point will help you better tailor what you're providing and better make decisions around where you're going to be doing some of this work.
And that can help you with your goals for the for whatever sponsorship work you're doing. If you know that a planner is going to probably be hired before you, then maybe you do some of those workshops and things that are geared directly towards planners, so that then by the time the couple thinks, oh, I might need a calligrapher, the planner knows who you are. Whereas if you're getting couples at the very beginning, they might kind of forget your name by the time they realize that they need this or want this at their wedding. So that can help you figure out what your goals should be for the project that you're working on too.
Great point.
So another thing I just thought of that I definitely want to cover is we talked about the value that's exchanged in all these transactions, even if it's not technically money on the table. So do you have any tips for quantifying that and making sure it's equal?
So it is tricky. It's tricky in the corporate world too. We're constantly asked, how do you quantify quantify the money that I've spent to have an influencer write about my product? And so in our world, what we try to do is connect that to shopper purchase behavior, right? We want to be able to say, oh, look, they went to your blog, and then they went to the retailer's website, and then 4 days later they made a purchase.
Yeah.
And we're able to get pretty close to that.
Okay.
In this world, it's a little bit more challenging because there's less data to work with, right? But I would say be really mindful when you're working with when you're providing work that you are asking for any access to any client lists or any access to any attendee lists in the case of shows and things like that. If they've got a referral function on their website, so if there's a way for people to click, hey, I'm interested, or hey, notify me, or sign me up for emails and update me. You want access to all that information so that you can promote and work with them yourselves. Also really important for you on your website, wherever you collect information from potential customers, that you're asking them where they found you.
Yeah.
So you're able to then further attribute new business to some of the work that you've done. And same thing with planners. So if a planner saw you at a show and maybe you've worked with them before, but it's been a while, asking kind of what triggered you to give me a call.
Yeah.
You
That's
know,
a great idea.
where did you see me most recently? Have you seen any of my advertising? And they say, oh my gosh, I saw the style shoot you did on XYZ site. Really important so that you can start to quantify the value of what you're getting back.
And I use my analytics on my website to track a little bit of that. So I get, if I do like a guest blog post on someone else's site, or if I'm featured on a wedding blog or something like that, you can see what links people click on to get to your site. So you can see where that traffic is actually coming from. That's kind of post doing the work, but it's a lot of it kind of post. Yeah, a lot of it is, and I think up front, just in our industry, we are able to value what we're giving them. So sometimes, depending on the work that you're doing, like sometimes I'll even send an invoice and I'll zero it out, but it at least shows them, hey, I'm providing you, you know, $250 worth of value in this shoot, or I'm providing you a certain amount. And so then it kind of helps them quantify, like a couple shoots I've had to say, you know, here's what all of that's going to cost, and you have to choose, you know, $400 worth kind of thing, because they wanted a bunch of stuff that was just going to be too much time, too much energy, too much cost for me to provide, based on the time frame that I was given. So I basically said, here's what the 10 things you're asking for are going to cost. Choose, you know, 4 of them. And so she was able to then choose what she thought would be best for the shoot based on my limits. So if you have kind of a limit on your value, don't be afraid to set that. Especially, I know a lot of people get really short time frames on some of this work. So if you know, that's just a way to kind of quantify the value on your end, and then they can, you know, they can use that just to make sure you're on par with what everyone else is contributing. One quick note that you probably don't experience a lot is if other people are getting paid for this work, I think that you should not do it for free necessarily.
Yes, everybody should get paid if somebody's getting paid.
Yes, if it's something like a workshop where they're charging a couple $100s for participants, then they should at least be throwing you materials costs if they're making money off of it. You shouldn't be putting money, like, negative in the red to participate in something that they're making money off of. So that's something I've been seeing a lot more recently.
And I think the only other thing I would mention is don't be afraid to get creative about the value exchange, right? Maybe it's advertising in a future publication. Maybe it's a feature in the publication at some point. Maybe it's a space at a show for the next, you know, couple shows or whatever that is. Don't be afraid to get creative around what you're going to get in return, especially if it's a newer publication or you're unclear necessarily on how much additional promotion you're going to get. Advertising space, things like that are kind of flex space for a lot of publications. And so be thinking about, okay, well, if I'm going to provide this, maybe in exchange I can ask for this or for that. And I think you'd probably be surprised at how many people would say, yeah, sure, we can do that for you.
Yeah. Especially if it's something that doesn't, like, cost them any money.
Yeah, absolutely.
They might be more willing to give you that than to actually pay. They may not have a budget for whatever it is you're doing, but they do have that extra ad space, or they do have some extra space. I love that. Yeah. So just being creative about what you're getting. So just another thing that I kind of want to talk about is a lot of people probably have had negative experiences with things like this. In the past, I've seen so much of that. A lot of people being really burnt out and just saying, you know, I'm never doing free work again. I'm never doing style shoots again. And I think it's important just to remember to evaluate those experiences honestly and, ask yourself what it was about that and what expectations you could have set. Because I think it's the same as working with paying clients. You just have to set those right expectations. And obviously in the corporate world, you guys do this a lot more formally. I think sometimes in the creative world, we're a little more loosey-goosey about it. But
yeah, I think it's really important to set expectations and be honest in your feedback too, right? So when you go into one of these opportunities, the publication likely knows that you're not doing it just because you don't have anything else going on, right? You're doing it because you want the exposure, you want to drive more business for yourself. And so be clear with them about your expectations up front in terms of what you hope to get from it, whether it's new planning leads, whether it's networking, whether it's new customers, whether it's all three. Setting expectations with them up front may help them better understand how to use your work as well. And then on the back end, if you're not receiving what you expected or what you discussed, be honest with them about that and say, listen, I put in a lot of time and work into this, and the discussion that we had or the contract that we had, made clear that I was going to be receiving either leads back or additional opportunities or something in exchange, and I don't really feel like I got that. And I just want to make sure that you understand that it makes it difficult for me as a creative to continue to provide these services for you if I'm not getting something back too. So it doesn't have to be a confrontation. I know it can feel uncomfortable sometimes, but it's important to set clear expectations and provide them feedback, because if not, they may think that all the creatives they're working with are just loving doing all of this work and it's such a great experience for them. And in reality, if you're all kind of standing behind the curtain going, oh my gosh, I can't believe they asked me for more work, and you're not getting anything out of it, maybe there's something different that they could be doing to help you since you're helping them.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And I've had a few photographers reshoot my stationery in the studio because they, for whatever reason, the day of the shoot was really stressful and they weren't able to get good shots of that because they were focusing on the models and the flowers and things like that. And the stationery, luckily, is something that can be reshot without resetting up the entire thing. So, but if you get photos back that you don't think, they didn't take pictures of everything you did, or they didn't meet the expectations, it's another reason the contract is a really good idea. Because per the contract is a great phrase to use. Yes.
Magic in some cases.
Yes, it's amazing what that will do. And also, if you're the person putting on the shoot, I think it's important just to consider all of these things that we talked about and keep in mind what everyone is going to be putting in value-wise, and make sure that you're giving them that value back. So make sure if someone provides a bunch of boutonnieres and centerpieces and an archway thing and florals, that you're getting pictures of all of those. And the same applies for food, stationery, the whole deal. So just making sure that you're kind of providing that value. Like, I ask photographers to take pictures of my calligraphy workshops so I can use them as marketing photos, but I always make sure to give that photographer a free seat in the class and make sure it's something that they want and are interested in. And then I structure the schedule so they really get the most out of the full class, so they get kind of an equal value, or at least somewhat equal value as what I'm asking of them.
Yeah, it's a great example of a value exchange, right? You're providing them something that they're interested in, and you're getting something in exchange. It's not costing anybody money in between.
Right. And I think there's a big difference in costing someone time and costing someone money.
Yes, huge difference.
Things like, photographer, for the most part, it's more time-based, and makeup artists and things like that. They do have supplies, of course, but if you're asking someone for a giant fabric aisle runner that's 40 feet long,
there's hard costs
that's going to be
associated with
very
that.
Expensive to produce. So there is a difference between something that is a donation of time and a donation of money. So just kind of make sure you're valuing those things in the right way. Yeah. So is there anything else you want to tell us, Courtney? I don't know.
Just don't be afraid of it, right? So I think it probably seems a little bit scary, or like this open-ended right to provide things for free, and it doesn't need to be that way. So don't feel like you can't ask for what you want in the process, and make sure that if it's not working for you, you're changing something so that it is. It's supposed to be as much value for you as it is for them. Really important.
Absolutely. And if it's not working out, if you've had these bad experiences and nothing has changed, feel free to say no.
Yeah, take a break.
skip a shoot, skip some free work. I try to dispel the rumor that exposure doesn't pay the bills, because I do believe that exposure leads to
it absolutely
a lot of positive things that pay the bills. There's this entire industry
yes
based on it that wouldn't exist. Courtney was telling me earlier that social media used to just be kind of an experiment in the marketing world, and then her company acquired an entire new company for influencer marketing. So it's becoming this solid thing that you definitely have to have on your plan, and the reason for that is because it works. It really does work. So I don't know if any of you play HQ, but I saw that
HQ,
Nike
the bane of
gave
my
like
existence.
$100,000 prize just to be the sponsor and have all the questions be about HQ or about Nike on HQ that night. So
as advertising, we become more immune to advertising, both in the digital space and in the print space. We're getting ad blindness, right? When you go to a website now, I guarantee you, if I asked you 3 minutes later what the banner advertisement was on the website, you'd be like,
I don't know.
I don't know. But authentic blog content, authentic styled shoots that you've talked about, all of that stuff is real, and so people are going to read it. They're not blind to it, and so it's more effective than some of the traditional marketing and advertising mediums that we've seen before. And so like you mentioned, big brands, big retailers, Nike, I mean, I don't know if you get much bigger than Nike, are taking advantage of it, and it's something that because it is so accessible and scalable, is something that you guys should take advantage of too, where appropriate.
Okay, so thank you, Courtney, for giving us some insight into how this all works on the corporate side. The industries are different, but this is so overlapping. I think the concepts are all so valuable in any industry. So if you kind of take some of these tips and set the right goals, make sure you're reaching the ideal client that you want to reach, and not being afraid to advocate for yourself in the process, then I think you'll have a much better experience with some of these exposure opportunities in the future, and you won't feel like I can't pay my landlord with exposure, because you'll start being able to figure out the right kinds of exposure, and making sure you follow up and do those things that are going to help you get the money that you can pay your landlord with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Courtney.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You're my first guest. So
exciting. First guest. Yay.
She's going to go down in history.
Remember me when
First
Laney gets famous.
Oh, and Courtney too.
I hope I'm not famous.
Marketing guru. And I'll be sure to be sharing some pictures from her wedding soon too. So keep an eye out for
exciting.
them. Let us know what you think below with some comments. We'd be happy to provide some feedback.
Yeah.
And enjoy all your fun exposure opportunities in the future. Thanks, everyone. Bye.